Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chorus Weekly Briefing. It's October 29th, 2020. Jim Benton here, CEO of Chorus. And today I'm with Nancy Nardin, founder of Smart Selling Tools. Nancy, thrilled to talk today about the data behind sales process changes and just everything we're seeing in the landscape. But welcome. How are we doing today?
Thank you. Thank you. Doing great. It's wonderful to be here, and there's so many exciting things going on. So I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Well, first of all, I love the landscape behind you. I know this is a signature trait of the work you've done. I want, in the spirit of storytelling, which is one of our stats in the past episodes, what's the story behind the sales tech landscape? How'd you come up with this, and what was it like to put this together?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I've been following sales tech for a long time. One could say even since the early 80s, because my first job was selling for Grid Systems, which some people may know was the world's first laptop computer. And we had to figure out, why would someone want to take a laptop or their work with them? So it was just a totally foreign concept. And there were no sales applications at the time. There was no CRM or even the concept of a digital slideshow. So I've been sort of following the evolution of sales apps for a long time. And when I launched Smart Selling Tools 12 years ago, which, by the way, for those that don't know, it's just a site to offer up free, valuable resources for you to learn about and stay up to date on tools, because it's moving very quickly. And in terms of the landscape, I resisted doing it for a long time because I thought, well, what good is it going to be to just have a whole bunch of logos on a screen? How's that going to help people? And then I realized I could put it into a framework, which I call the hierarchy of sales. That's like Maslow's hierarchy, right? The most important thing is to know who you're selling to and why, and to get that right. So the left side of the hierarchy is all the tools that help you understand who to sell to and why. And then it moves over to the right, and it's about how do you get those people to engage. So if you look at the landscape that way, then you can really start to make sense of how to use these tools and which tools to use.
Well, I think I read you have 600 logos on there. I do feel like I know just about all 600 over the years. But I think that these tools are being leveraged more than ever. And during this period of time, we're seeing the transformation, the digital transformation in sales. And maybe just to start with some of the data, one of the interesting stats, Nancy, is that the median meeting volume, so just how many meetings are sales reps having, if we look back to March versus where we saw in September, it's holding up. And the dark blue is specifically the SaaS category, which you can see it took a bigger hit than sort of general sales back in April, rebounded, and has kind of continued to show some rebound over the last few months. Are you surprised by this?
That's interesting. Yeah, it is interesting. I think that was the big question we all had, was what's going to happen? Are you going to still be able to connect with people? Because a lot of people are working from home. Of course, many still use their work email. So if you're sending out emails, you can get through. But it is surprising. That was the big fear. It's great to see that the number of meetings are holding up. I think it's probably indicative of people doubling down and saying, look, we can't lose momentum. We've got to do whatever we can do to keep the volume up, right? So
I'm curious, when you're talking to the different companies that you engage with, is it consistent? Are you still consistently hearing about teams being surprised by the levels of productivity they've been able to maintain?
I think I don't think there's any surprise there, because they are focusing on that, right? Everyone is doing 10 jobs. And so that the sellers are doing 10 jobs as well. They're having to reach out as more than ever before. They're having to make sure they can follow up. They're having to adopt new technologies, which allow them to, as I say, get prospects to engage more. Because with all that noise, how do you actually break through it? So I think everyone's doubling down. And because of that, it may actually be helping the industry as a whole.
Wait, I'm curious, what has been your aha moment when you think about the amount of change that has happened? And even for you personally, when you just look at the last 6 months and how we sell, any aha moments as you've looked at this category?
Yeah, I think the aha moments are that it's finally here. To me, it feels like people are now recognizing, and maybe it took COVID for that to happen, but organizations are recognizing that sales technologies go way beyond, as this chart shows, CRM. So if all you have is CRM, you are not keeping up. And so that means that, they're embracing digital now, whereas 8, 9 months ago, maybe they weren't as open to it. And, as just as an example, my husband and I are getting refinancing our house,
Sure.
right? Because the mortgage rates are so great right now. So we're refinancing, and everything has been done online. Everything's been digital. The process has been so clear because they've figured out, well, what happens at this step and this step, and how can we make that a better buyer experience, down to the point where when we got the underwriter approval, I got an email that said, congratulations. And it was a video, and it had our names in the video. And not just in one place, in a couple of places. And I'm thinking, gosh, that's more consumer like, but B2B is starting to embrace that as well, and realize we're selling to individuals, even though we may be, right, a company is making the purchase.
I think it's right.
So that's kind of an aha moment to see those things start to happen. And it's great to see.
I think that you're right. It's all happening right now. Things are really in motion. You're seeing some incredible innovation and just drive to produce at levels that people didn't think were possible. Well, let's jump into a couple other stats that were interesting in terms of how things are changing from the people side of things. So when we look at sales, we're finding that more sellers are joining the meetings of their other sellers. So instead of just meeting with one AE, you might have an AE plus their leader or another AE joining. But since January, February, it's consistently been up that there's more people joining these calls. We're also finding that when you look at CSM participation with AEs, it's up significantly. It's up 41% since January. And you can clearly see that we're just in a new era of sales and CSMs working together in a way that we've always hoped and is now actually happening, as well as sales engineers, up 32%. So we're finding a significant team selling mindset. And lastly, leadership. Leadership is continually being pulled in. It was incredible, the level of leadership being pulled in early. It's coming down, which is probably positive to see. It was unsustainable, the amount of time invested up front, but it's still up 26% since we saw in January. And I'm curious, as you, Nancy, work with just incredible execs across the industry, what's the biggest question they're asking you today?
Well, I think it actually pertains to the slides you just showed. I think the biggest question is, what can I do as a sales leader to help move the needle? Because it's one thing to get a lot of leads in the pipeline. It's another to get a lot of meetings from those leads, and then to actually make those turn into opportunities and into closed deals. What can I do as a sales leader to help move that needle? And whether that is, hey, let's get the CSMs involved, let's get the AEs more involved. I think it's more possible for that to happen because we are going digital. And it just tells me that if you aren't involving those people, to maybe think about a strategy where it makes sense. So when does it make sense to bring them in, and why? And how will we know when it's that time? So set up a process so that you can more systematize that and get the right people invited to those meetings.
Are they pushing you on a key challenge right now? Is there a common challenge that you're hearing about from all the different execs out there?
Yes and no, right? Because everyone has they all have the same problems, but they have different priorities in terms of which problem they want to solve first. I always say there are just as many problems as there are solutions to solve them. So the first step is to figure out, again, what's going to move the needle most. Which problem should I be solving that's going to help us achieve our objective? And by the way, there are like 4 key objectives that sales organizations have. How can I sell more in less time at the right price while lowering costs? Those are the 4 golden goals, I call them. But when you look at, well, how do I prioritize those? Because they're not all weighted equally. The most important one, and the only one you focus on, unless you have that nailed, is how do I sell more? And what they're really saying is, how do I hit quota? Because if I'm not hitting quota, if I am hitting quota, then I'm kind of good. I'm not as motivated to try new things. But if I'm not hitting quota, which, let's face it, happens a lot of the time, right? Because there's these ebbs and flows of hitting quota. And even if you hit quota at the end, there's a lot of times when you feel like you're not hitting it. So that is the big problem a lot of executives talk to me about, is what can I do, knowing that hitting quota is a lagging indicator, right? I don't know whether I've hit it until the time is up. So how can I identify leading indicators that are going to allow me to know whether or not I'm on track?
And I feel like that's what's behind you. 600
yes,
logos.
That's good. That's right.
This category have been figuring that out and surfacing the data. I do think there's been talk over the years. I read something years ago, and as you know, I've been in sales tech for quite a while with ClearSight before this. But someone mentioned sales disenablement, and it struck me when I saw this years ago. Clearly, there's remarkable benefit. I'm in conversation intelligence and couldn't imagine a world without it. But when you think about groups today and sales process changes and putting this all together, what are your thoughts on that concept of sales
disenablement? Wow. Well, it reminds me, this week is Sales Enablement Week. So we've got the Sales Enablement Society holding a 3-day event. And I would hate to think of there being a Sales Disenablement Society, right? But the term, I think, is valid to some degree, because what happens, and I see this all the time when I'm talking to sales leaders, and I have to ask them, are you doing that because it helps you, or are you doing it because it's going to help your sales reps? And it's great that you're finding things that are going to help you as a manager, but what are you finding? How many of these solutions are you looking at? Are you looking at any of them? And if you're not, then you're not considering what's going to actually help your sellers. And if you're not helping your sellers, then, you are disabling them. You're certainly not enabling them. But so I think it comes down to, it's hard for people to step outside of that perspective and say, look, I know when I was a seller, all I had to do is just really focus and buckle down and make a lot of calls and not let things slip through the crack. But you can't expect that that's going to be enough for sales people today.
I think that's right. I think clearly there's massive benefit, but it's not about huge behavior changes. Those are challenging. It's about products that don't require adoption change, that just show up, that make you better.
Yes.
And I think the biggest thing I've been looking for is just, I see us as in the business of relationships. How do we make sure that the conversations we're having connect and we're bringing our best and so forth? But in general, how do we just make sure we're enabling across the industry sales reps to be human, to be authentic, to be their absolute best selves versus numb and automated? And so there is still this level of human that I think that we're all trying to pull out of our teams.
Yeah, but you know what? I think the marketing organization is changing now just as much as sales is recognizing that digital is here to stay and they have to embrace it. Marketing is realizing that they have to go beyond demand gen and help focus on opportunity gen. And that has been a clear delineation in the past, where marketers say, oh, no, that's not on me, that's on you. We've given you all this great content, but if you're not giving me content that's going to help me, for instance, in these email sequences. Right? So now we have tools, we can send out a lot more emails, follow up automated so that I'm not having to remember. But if those are just the same kind of below average emails being sent, then it doesn't matter that you're sending more of them. So you have to enhance the impact that those have. And that's where marketing comes in.
Are you finding that?
I was just going to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Huh? Well, I was going to say the same thing as you're moving down. Let's say I've got a proposal I'm going to send out. Is marketing, or are you as a marketing professional giving sales a way to personalize those proposals? Are you giving them a way to take the different modules and create a new proposal based on that first prospect's industry, based on what they said their goals were, and to put their name and logo on it. So those are some real concrete examples of things marketing can and should be doing.
Well, I love it. We have 26% higher C-level participation. So clearly marketing starting to get a bit closer from that standpoint.
Right.
Are you
Right.
seeing the SDRs and the BDRs shift to marketing more, or are you still seeing it predominantly underneath the sales CRO hat?
Oh, it's definitely shifting more and more under marketing, because look, SDRs have been the first group within sales to really adopt in a massive way technology. And that's because there's been some great technology to help them with that. But the marketing budget has typically come from, the budget for those tools have typically come from marketing, because it's still kind of considered top of the funnel. You're still converting a lead to a meeting, as an example. And so that's kind of top of funnel. And marketing's got a lot more appetite for experimenting with tools. They know how to use tools and data to do measurement. And again, SDRs are measured on leading indicator things. So it's really easy to see, are we moving the needle from an SDR perspective?
I think it's right. I think when I put myself in the customer shoes, who do I want SDRs to be reporting to? What's the motion that I want? And I still get pulled back over to the sales side of, I want single accountability. I want these teams just holding hands. I want them to be one team. And this can be accomplished different ways, but that's always been
that I think. Yeah, so that's why we're starting to hear the term revenue enablement instead of sales enablement, because instead of thinking of marketing as one and sales as another, it's really all about revenue. There's just that the first stage of it is marketing activities, and the middle stage is SDR activities, and the second stage is AE activities, but it's all about revenue enablement.
That's right. That's right. The sales word is quickly dying out during this period. I've seen that across the board on the rebrandings. One final area, Nancy, I wanted to get your thoughts on is around when we summarize sort of the changes that we're seeing across processes. Overall, the data has been showing that we're having to meet more right now. We're having more meetings to get our deals won. Actually, on the close loss, the meetings are up as well. The C-suite more involved that we've shared, and then we're finding that people are demoing more often and earlier in the sales process than we were previously. What reaction do you have to kind of the sales process changes that we're showing here and what you're seeing in the industry now?
Well, gosh, these are interesting stats. So 10% more meetings are required for a closed won deal. Wow, that's a big increase in use of sales capacity. Right? So that tells me that we've got to find way. Remember, one of those goals was to lower costs.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're doing 10% more meetings, we're really not hitting that objective. Now, are those meetings making a difference in terms of whether or not we're hitting quota? I think that's something really to take a look at. So that's one thing. Also, the 78% of demos start in the first call. That's an interesting stat. And I think that has to do with the fact that buyers have the ability through digital to understand what they're looking for. And so they don't want to spend a lot of time sharing information about their challenges. They just want to see, what does the product look like? And so that means it makes it all the more difficult for a sales rep to figure out how to differentiate themselves. Right? Because if I'm just demoing a product and I'm not able to really add value, how am I differentiating myself? So that probably explains the middle stat, which is I'm going to bring in more C-suite executives and get them involved so that we can maybe elevate that discussion and differentiate ourselves as a result. So we're not just seen as we're just checking off features and functionality.
I think it's spot on in terms of what we're seeing. It's taking more sales effort, which is the more meetings, the more leadership, and potentially more visuals to overcome hurdles and to make sure that limited budgets are being allocated on the correct solutions right now.
Yeah, maybe if I could just end with a story on that, because we're talking about having more meetings and bringing in more people and just a lot more activity. I have heard Dr. Howard Dover's speech many times. Dr. Howard Dover is the director. I'm reading off his LinkedIn because I want to get this right. Center for Professional Sales and Sales Coach at the University of Texas at Dallas. We're seeing lots of these kinds of programs now at colleges and universities. And he's just phenomenal what he's doing with that organization. But he talks about what's happening in sales as a bit like what happened with the Dust Bowl. And so we're getting a lower and lower yield on our farming activity. So what do? We increase the activity, and so everybody's increasing the activity, and they're getting lower and lower yields from planting more and more of their crops. And the same thing's happening kind of in sales. We've got more and more salespeople, making 10 times the number of phone calls, sending 100 times the number of emails. That's a lot of volume. And so the yield is going down. And that's something I think sales leaders really need to think about is, does the numbers game still work like it used to? Or do we need to pull back a little bit and think about how can we be more effective? How can we make fewer sales calls or outreach attempts and have the same results?
I think we're seeing massive changes on the front end of the sales cycle over the next 5 years. I'm not convinced what we're doing right now works as an industry. I think we've lost the heart and we've become essentially human-enabled tech. And I'm really looking forward to becoming tech-enabled humans. And I just look at my own inbox. The noise I get daily it's not impressive. I'm not impressed by the industry on how we're selling ourselves. So we've lost the conviction, in my opinion, that a seller would bring to those openings. And these are real challenges. Technology will help us. We'll get through this. But I'm expecting to see massive changes because I think that what you just shared, we all know it. And we need to get the conviction and the heart to solving real problems back in. And it's not cute sequences that are lacking the meaning. And so sequences can be great, but we need to get the heart and conviction back.
It's a good way to put it.
I'm looking forward to it. Hey, Nancy, thanks so much. I really enjoy the dialogue and conversation and just kicking off the day with you today.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thanks, Jim. I've enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, have a great rest of the day. Cheers.